thank you folks for coming back, and those people in the regions for staying with us. As I said, for those people who've just joined us, I'm going to be going through what I just did in the last session and just looking at what some of the processes have been and how basically I've been playing with your brains. Okay, so we had another session planned for this, but I think it's more important that I have a look at this and then just take a bits and pieces of that last session if we have time. Okay, all right. Now, the last session I gave this as a journey, looking at what we call the principles of brain-friendly training. Okay, and I started this one here on state, and I said this is vital. This is, they reckon, of all the principles, this is the vital one. You know, get your learners in a resourceful state, and part of that is getting them in a relaxed state. Okay, those people who are really anxious, okay, is how you can and learning how you can get them in that quiet, relaxed state. Now, I then talked about what happens with the brain anxiety and cortisol and adrenaline, how that pumps through, and how when we are at that really anxious state, our brain is operating here at the reptilian and the mammal state, okay, not this neocortex. Part of what we need here is, all the research is saying, is to get that cortisol down, we've got to spend time here in the now. This is what this mindfulness, being present, being in the moment, okay? And what I'm saying is the best way of doing that is to get out of your head, get into your body, right? Now, what I then took you through some exercise in how a visual learner would do it, how an auditory learner would do it, how a kinesthetic learner, and how a tactile learner might do it, okay, to get themselves back into their bodies. I then took the a process of one here, which I took mainly for yourselves, that came from Brain Gym, the 4 exercises of Brain Gym. Okay. Now, I do acknowledge that this is more for yourselves that I did this exercise. Okay. If you're going to do this with your students, I would recommend you do what I did. Get them to focus first, then do the activity, and then focus again what happened afterwards. And something shifted here. That's what we call a conscious convincer. Right, yeah, got it. Okay. So I will look at that in this session. What I would like to look at now is these key learning states that I took you through in the last 45 minutes. Okay. I then want to look at the other brain-friendly principles. Okay, and then a little bit of stuff on left and right brain if we've got time for that. Okay. All right. So if you please, those of you who've got this booklet, if you can turn here. And it turns here about how you can affect state, about the language you use, the focus, and the physiology. Right? But there are 5 key learning states. Now, first state. First one, you get them curious, okay? That's where you start playing with some brain chemicals here. Okay? Get them curious. Get them interested in what you're going to talk about. How you're going to hook them. I often refer to this one here is our early engagement. Now, it's like here, you've got a megaphone, okay? And to me, having had some of you who've had teenage kids, okay, when you really want to get that early engagement of a morning, you really got to blast them. Now, early engagement, okay? And for us as trainers and educators, that's a really key thing, okay? Is when you get them in there, how are you going to engage them? How are you going to hook them? Now, I did in that last session, and for those who didn't see that last session, go back and have a look at the video, or the one that I did in May, probably a key one as well, okay? What are some of the things that I have done so far in both sessions that I've done? I set out to hook you guys. What are some of the things to get you curious? This one here, okay? When I got you, all of a sudden you're looking up here, hands going in a clockwise direction, all down here, oh, it's gone anti-clockwise, okay? What's going on here, right? That was a hook. Oh, I wonder what this bloke's on about, okay? What happened here in the brain? I'm talking about the brain here. So get them curious. This morning when I got you up here, and the mark on the wall, okay, and then extend it further. Okay, possibility thinking, lifting you out. Okay, what's some other things I did to hook you guys this morning? Got you up. How you foot? So I was just sitting down there. I got you moving. Change your physiology. Okay. What else did I do to hook you, get you curious? The overview. Okay. Remember what I did? You're saying, I wonder why he's done that. Why didn't he use colour? Why has he used little symbols there? Whose mind was saying that sort of stuff to them? You know. What about when I told you about the pencil technique? When I said that I did this all this morning before you arrived. Okay. I bet you some of you thought, geez, that's a bit clever. You know, we might learn something from him today. That's what I thought when I first heard that one. I thought, geez, I might learn something from this bloke today. So I'm at to hook you. Okay? So how are you going to hook them? Okay? Can I give you some simple things we could do here, folks? Okay? In this hooking exercise. It can be things like a video YouTube. Do any of you do anything on communication? Anyone does anything in communication for students? Can I give you a good video to have a look at YouTube? It's called Voice, V-O-I-C-E, Voice Activated Lifts, L-I-F-T-S, right? It's about two Scotchmen in a lift, and they're trying to get the voice activated lift to recognise the Scottish accent, right? If you want an hilarious video, YouTube clip, it's Voice Activated Lifts. Brilliant, okay? It's a little 3-minute clip. Great way to start your class on communication. Is anyone doing anything on customer service? Yeah. Okay, good. There's one there, it's called Cheap Flights, C-H-E-A-P, Cheap Flights. Then you Google Irish singers. Oh, yeah. It's a fascinating AIDA is the band. I always actually saw their concert on New Year's Day this year. Brilliant. Talk about, you know, getting a cheap flight and the consequences when you buy a cheap flight online. Hilarious video, but it hooks people. Oh, that's interesting, okay? You might look up TV, Google TV game shows, okay? You just Google up TV game shows, you'll have dozens of these old shows come, right back from Bob Dyer's Picker Box, you know, my era, right? Right through to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So you might start your class on something, you know, really interesting, great topic like workplace health and safety, and throw in a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game on it. Throw in some questions and with some 4 alternative answers. Get into Phone of Freedom, players, teams. Okay? You get them hooked. Throw in a few curly ones. Okay? I would normally throw out my set of cards. I have a set of 16 workplace health and safety cards. Okay, which I get teams to work out and put these 16 cards, they're pictured, cartoon characters, cartoon cards, which they then got to put in the sequence of what happened. Right? Now, and you can do this with anything, but basically people put out what they think happened in this scenario, and then you and everyone's pretty happy, get them to do market research, go and check everyone else's out, then you throw in a curly one and say, yeah, but the chemical reacts badly with water. And here are all these people who've got this guy showering underwater after he's been hit by the chemical. Yeah, so you throw a curly one, you hook them. This state of curiosity, okay, is the first one we want to hear, okay? You may have props. Can I give you another way of hooking people? Like I had a group of health educators in a nursing care home, aged care facilities. What they were finding is that their aged care nurses were not dressing wounds in the correct procedure. So what they did is they came in, they gave every table a picture of a typical wound they'd expect to see in an aged care facility. Then they brought the trolley out and each team had to go and get what they thought was the things they would need to dress that wound. Like they had Dettol and swabs and bandages, put them in order, and then everyone had to go around and correct it or mark each other 1 to 10 and what they thought was the correct procedure. Then the educator goes around and says, yeah, this is good, but what happens if this happens? So it gets people curious. Are you with me? Okay. So now you could use in my workshops, full day workshops, I get a bit of masking tape. Throw a bit of masking tape out. Okay, and you get people to place themselves either side of the masking tape. And you ask them, okay, who's ever been to a workplace health and safety talk before? Everyone moves forward, you know. Get them out, you know. Who's been? Could I just suggest to you guys here, can I have a show of hands, Gary? Those people who've been training for more than 5 years. Would you put your hand up? Okay. Those people who have been trained somewhere else besides the institution they're at now. Okay. Now, okay, I can have you put your hand up and down, Much more powerful if I have a bit of masking tape and get you up out of your feet, up and moving in and out. Okay? Now, again, it's a little bit limiting because I want to give the experience to people out in the regions as well. So I'm just talking about it, but this is how I'd have you do it, rather than just sit there, you know. You might then have a bit of masking tape on the ground. I better not go and pinch masking tape now, but if you can just imagine masking tape on the ground, then you might say to the group, okay, could someone give me a topic that they're training in at the moment? Anything? What part of hospitality?
Food and beverage.
Food and beverage, what part of food and beverage?
Restaurant services.
Restaurant services, okay. So it might be greeting customers. Can we use that as a limiting? Okay, you might say here, between 1 and 10, how confident do you feel at the moment about the procedure of greeting customers as they arrive? Okay. Oh, I'm about here, 3 at the moment, right? Then you say to your group, right, share with the people next to you what you picked, what you would like to get from today to feel more confident with the correct protocol of greeting customers. Okay, so now the groups of 2 or 3, they've got their work, they're coming up with ideas. So you're not going around the room asking for expectations. You're getting people to come up with the ideas themselves. Okay? Then at the end of the day, you might say to people, okay, between 0 to 10, how confident do you feel now about greeting customers, the protocol for greeting customers? Oh, well, I'm probably about here now. So I'm 7 now. Come from 3 to 7. So I've made a conscious decision, conscious statement. I've learned something from today. Then you throw the group and say, okay, what would you, in groups of 2 or 3 around the same level, what would you need to do now to feel more confident with the protocol of greeting customers? Oh, I'd need to practice it. I'd need to kind of go back and look at my stuff. So they're now identifying the action they need to take. You're not here saying, well, when you get home, you do this, this, and this. You're actually they're coming up with their own answers. Am I making sense, folks? Okay. Simple thing like a bit of masking tape. So you're throwing it back on the students, looking at what they can do. Okay. So this is this early engagement. You get them curious. Okay. The next one, on here, is the wow state. Okay, next state, wow. Okay. This is this wow state. Okay, when you come down here and all of a sudden you've gone from clockwise to anti-clockwise. Oh wow, what happened? Right? Now again, I'm playing with brain chemicals. In your workbook, I have got a definition of what is actually happening in each of these states. What chemicals are starting to kick in, okay, and how this is helping learners. You then get them at the yes, got it state. Understand. Okay? Then you throw a bit of a challenge. I think in that book I've got concern, but really it's a challenge. Okay, next, give them a challenge. Okay, it might be a little activity they've got to do. Preferably something that they can use information with an activity there. Okay, that gets a little bit of cortisol started in the head. It may be a time frame you put people under. Okay, and last state here is the chill out state. Now, you know when sometimes you're thinking about trying to find someone's name and it just won't come to you, then you go and do something else and it automatically comes back to you? Okay, all the time. Okay, now that's what we call the incubation state, right? When you just take the pressure off, and this makes sense when you think about anxiety. Okay, when you're really worried and anxious, you can't think of the neocortex state. You know, it's typical. So you're trying to go away from it, chill out. As you chill out, the brain gets up that neocortex and starts to have clarity. That's this chill out state, right? Now, in your booklets, folks, those people who have got them, those people out in the regions, you can get this book online if you, and you have had this sent to you as well. So it's your own fault. Okay? Okay, so that's it. Now, into those pages there, I've actually got what actually happens to the brain. I've then got here, in this little matrix here, each of the states, what happens, why you would activate that state, and some of the things that how you might activate that state. Okay? So there's a whole heap of activities there for you. Is that okay, folks? Okay. Now, can I then go back? So this is our engagement. Now, can I have a look at how we might use what we call these principles of brain-friendly training? Now, in your workbook, it's this page here, okay? I'm just going to put some key things. This gives you a little bit of an idea of how you might look at these brain-friendly training. But our first one here is you keep it real. And in my rough drawing here, this is a wheel, right? And this is here is when the rubber hits the road, okay? The rubber hits the road. Make sure your learning is real for people, okay? That they have got a goal, they have got the overview. You're looking here at setting up things like the RAS, the Reticular Activation System. You do that with the overview, the beginning of the session. Get them what you're going to get them to look at, what's the session's about. So you're setting the RAS up, this is what I want you to look at. I mentioned in the first session, the yellow Mazda, go and buy a yellow Mazda, drive out in the road in your yellow Mazda, you'll see it everywhere because the RAS is looking for it. What you want to do is set your students up to focus on what you want them to focus on. That's what the overview does, okay? This is where, now, Mark Miller said this morning about the flipped classroom. Did you folks hear Mark talk about the flipped classroom, you know? It's brilliant, okay? An example from Queensland, if you Google up flipped classroom, the Queensland University, first year engineering, they have gone from a 32% attendance to a 94% attendance rate with this flipped classroom model. Phenomenal. They got 700 first year students turning up for lectures and they put them in this, so they give them a video clip on the theory to watch before they come the next day, they actually work on it. Okay? So in that model, folks, can I again go back and ask you to have a look at the video that I did in May, okay? Go and have a look at that one. So again, it's only a 45-minute session, but it will give you a lot of insights on what I'm talking about here, okay? And particularly what I've done in helping you understand putting all VOKT together, okay? All right, so keeping it real. This is the WIFM. What's in it for them? Now, WIFM is, that's in Sales 101. What's in it for me? I'm saying as educators, we've got to look at it, what's in it for them, okay? If they are going to give us 45 minutes of their lives that you have so kindly given to me this session, okay, or a day, or they've given you a semester of their life, you know, what are they going to leave with? So in a 45-minute session, that a benefit to them, real benefit to them. Now, we're not talking about, oh, they'll know how to do this, this and this. How will that benefit their lives? With the WIFM in sales, I talk about what's called features and benefits, okay? Features tell, benefits sell. So how will, if they leave here with this information, how will it benefit their lives? That will get you passionate. Even about codes of conduct, you can become passionate if you honestly believe there's some benefits if they do this for them, okay? This is where you set up goals. The rubber hits the road. Okay, next one over here is unique. Learners are unique. Okay? So here, let's up on that podium. Right. Now, can I just get you at your tables, please? Your tables and people at home. Can you just, well, first, before you even do that, just by yourself, can you just down a couple of things what you know about learners, okay, how learners vary, okay, what are some of the things that we know about the uniqueness of learners? Just 10 seconds, just write down a couple of ideas for yourselves there, please. Okay. What are some of the things that tell us that learners are unique? Okay, come on. What are some of the things that we know about the uniqueness of learners? Anyone like to throw an idea? Okay, we have left and right brainers in our rooms, okay? So some people will have more left brain tendency, some will have a right brain tendency. What else do we know?
Previous learning experience.
Okay, the learning experience. Okay, we know that some people are visual learners, some are auditory, some are kinesthetic, some are tactile. We know that we have global learners and we have analytic learners. We have all the stuff there on Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences.
With that Gardner, with the global analysis, I see it as a big picture, small picture.
Big picture, small picture.
Sometimes I just want to give them the big picture first and we'll go back and fill it in. But I lose some people because they can't move, they don't even want the big picture because they've got to have all the details.
Yes, so what I did with you this morning by giving you, the question was that if you give the big picture first, there'll be some who want the more detail. That's why you give this overview, okay, and particularly colour, because then they can see, well, it's not going to be random, it's going to be a step-by-step process. So you've engaged both the analytics and the globals that way, all right? Folks, can I just, most people can understand this, okay, in the delivery, but can I also challenge you in your assessment, okay? How does your assessment take note of all the different learning styles? Right? Now, in your workbook, and that is in the second part of the workshop, and we'll have that for you folk in this room, but those people who are online, you'll probably have the second part anyway. But we actually have, what I've done here is I've given you a whole range, and you guys in the room, I'll give you one when you're going. A whole heap of ideas of how you would spot a visual learner, how you would cater for them. Spot an auditory, cater for them, spot it, manual, cater for them. Could I maybe get those books, part 2, handed out to the group here? Yep, okay. So, got lots of ideas there. Now, that video from May will explain that to you. This is what I actually got people doing a round robin to come up with lots of ideas of what you could do here, okay? All right, can I now please get everyone just to write down for me, please, 1 or 2 things that you could do, maybe, 1 or 2 things, and those people at home as well, how you would use a mobile phone, to cater for a visual learner, an auditory learner, a kinesthetic learner, a tactile learner. 1 of each of those, please. 1 of each of those, how you might use a mobile phone to cater for these 4 different sorts of learners: visual, auditory, kinesthetic or tactile learner. What normally happens now is that I would get here and I would get you to start giving me all the list here, okay? So I'd say, okay, what are some of the visual things and what are some of the things you might put here? A YouTube. Might watch a YouTube. Might have a flipped classroom there. Now, just be aware, classroom, be aware of what I'm doing here, okay? As soon as I have got taking the list here myself and putting these down, my back's to you, and then my mind's thinking, who's engaged, who's not engaged, okay? Then all of a sudden, I doubt my spelling once, which I did here, okay? And I am gone for the day. You're not paying for me to worry about my spelling, okay? I'm best served to be a facilitator. So if you ever have to have a list on your chart stand here, you ask for a scribe. You get someone else to scribe for you, and you stand back here and you then can watch it and you can add value from what you've seen, okay? If at all possible, don't get caught when you're doing a list being the scribe yourselves. That makes sense? Again, running fast here, guys, so sing out if there's any questions. People online, please type in any questions you've got here. Okay, now, I would do my best now, and I'm not going to do this, okay, time constraints, okay. I would really encourage you to avoid a brainstorm session, which I was about to run then, okay. Bad theory, okay. What you're much better doing is what I practice getting people to write their own ideas down, which you just did, share with the people at your table, and then we run what's called a round robin. Okay, so I would give this table the V's to look at. These would be the A's, these would be the K's, these would be your T's. Okay, then 2 minutes, write down all the things you can get for the VA your table. Then we'll pass the paper around, then pass the paper around again. And then I will leave the last round, I'll leave there and get you up and move bodies around. Okay, and I would guarantee you that we would have well over 30 to 40 ideas here of how you would use a mobile phone for VAKT. Okay. I have also got a whole heap of stuff on on over 200 ideas of just using it straight VOKT as well as a mobile phone. Now, if anyone would like a list, like I've given you in that booklet, all the VOKTs here, okay? If anyone would like a list of some of the ideas that have come up from other groups on how to use a mobile phone, both as a learning and also as a revision tool, all I ask is that you email me, okay, and send that through. But to get those ideas from me, I need from you to give me two things. How you see you could use a mobile phone as a learning tool and also as a revision tool, okay? And I'll send you back out the other stuff. So that helps me build my bank of ideas up and give you some ideas as well. So you'll find that in the front of the email there. Is that okay, guys? Okay. Any clarification or question what I've been doing with you so far? Question, clarification? Okay. Pushing ahead. I will get through all these. Okay. Next one here. Make sure that you use what we call multisensory. So this third principle multisensory. Okay? What appears to be is that when people take stuff in a visual cortex, they store it in the visual cortex. They take it in the auditory, they store it in the auditory. Okay? So if you want your students to get this information and to be able to store the information, the more senses that you can fire up in the delivery process, the more they can fire up when they go to recall it, okay? So it's things like, how do you have your room as a multi-sensory experience for people? So it's not just, learning is an experience, okay? So how do you dress your room? How does your room say you matter when they walk in here, okay? Some people have been aware that I've been using music, okay? I always have, when people arrive, I have music going. Okay, if people are going to do a runner, I reckon it'll be right at the beginning of the day. Mentally, they've got something else happening. Give the room a bit of atmosphere. I've got this cloth, okay? It's just colourful. No matter where I am, I take this. It just gives atmosphere to the room. I would normally have now charts up around the room, okay? But you've just worked me too hard to get the charts up, okay? But that also gives atmosphere to the place, right? So you matter, okay? Now this one here, this one here is what we call to create or consume versus create. Now, this is a really, really powerful one. Okay. Can I get you just to imagine this is a tennis court, okay? Now, normally we would have it at a line in the middle of the court. The net will be in the middle of the court. What I'm saying to you, in the education environment, you want your net up this end, okay? So 30% and 70%. That should be us, this should be them. So the whole idea here is that you keep the ball in their court, okay? So 30% of the time should be you giving information, 70% of the time should be them doing something with that information, okay? Now, this is this whole idea of creating, not just consuming. Right? Okay, I've attempted, folks, throughout this process to keep doing that. I did run the risk earlier of putting too much here because I've just got so much I wanted to give you, and I thought, no, hold on, let's get them doing something with it as well. Okay, this last one is again this idea of state. Okay, and put a bit of fire underneath the Bunsen burner, and you turn liquid into a gaseous state here. Okay. Now, I said before there are three things we can do to affect state. Can I get you just to write down what you can recall are the three things that I said that an educator can do to set up a positive state or to affect state, to manipulate state. Just by yourself, there's a reason for this. Just jot it down by yourself straight away. Very quickly. Language. What was the next one? Physiology. Now, can I put a big plug in for physiology? Research is saying that sitting is a new smoking, okay? that the brain really needs movement, okay? And they're talking about, for us, our cells, just be aware of this yourselves, you know? If you are sitting all day, it's the same effect as smoking. Your life expectancy is going to be cut dramatically. You need to move at least every 30 minutes, not 30 seconds, 30 minutes. Okay, about a 2-minute stretch, even a stand up, a bit of a stretch, something like that is not wasting time. It is actually really powerful for the brain, for change of state, physiologically. Lots of stuff. In my day workshop, I put people through 53 change of state activities. At the end of the day, they're like, oh, today's gone so fast, but it's just because I've been doing this throughout the day. And the last one was focus. What are you going to get into focus on? Preferably take what I said at the beginning of the day, the positive possibility state, possibility thinking. Okay? All right. Now, can I wrap this up session by, again, we're still working with day one, part one. It's this page here on adding value. And at the top here is this, the reference to the video clip of May. I did in May. Go back and have a look at that, Flip Classroom. Okay. All right, I talked here about the overview and the power of overview. Now, some of the things that I have done with you guys in adding value today. All right, I have talked about pencil technique. Okay. If you were to come up here and have a look at this, you'll see that I've already written pencils on here. So I know what I'm going to talk about the next 3 minutes, okay? Simple pencil stuff, okay? I talked about here what we call, I've used, in the last couple of hours, I've used some universals. Now, universals are, 5 minutes ago, right. Universals are things that we use when telling stories or using a metaphor with people. If you can take something that people have an experience of, okay, and build your story around that, or as an example, okay? So, I did this with the overview. Okay. This was a universal. Who can relate to this one when they were in high school and they had a Bunsen burner and it went from liquid to vapor state? That was an attempt at a universal. The smiling brain was a universal. I used symbols to represent that as a universal, okay? I said this was a journey, okay? Now, I pre-paced you. In NLP terms, I set you up. It was an embedded command. I said we are going on a destination. There's a journey. We're going somewhere. There's a destination. So I'm playing with the RAS, setting that up for you, okay? Again, a pre-pacing embedded command. So beginning of each break, at the end of the morning tea, I'll say, when we get back, we'll be doing this and this. So I'm setting the brain up here, okay? Universals are very powerful for that, okay? Throughout here, okay, I used universal things that you would relate to, okay? The state here, I set up this state of curiosity when we talked about this as an example here, okay? Okay, next one here. It's called conscious convinces. Now, conscious convinces, and V-I-N-C-E-R-S, conscious convinces. Okay, these are activities that you get the group to do, and they say, oh, yeah, got that, okay? If you can think of something that you can get them physically to do that changes something in their awareness, oh, that worked. Their brain is open to learning, okay? Now, give me a couple of examples of conscious convinces that I took you guys through, had taken you through already this morning. The hand. Up here was that one. Muscle checking you. That was a conscious convince. Something happened when we talked negative, I can't do this. When I said, I believe I can't do it, but that may not be true, the brain was nice, arm was firm, right? Oh, something I was trying to get you connected with the mind, the words and body, what happens to our body through a conscious convincer. That was a conscious convincer, okay? When I got you to do to be aware of your bodies, then had the 4 things of pace. Water, these points here, cross crawl, this one here. And then, oh, something's happened, I feel more relaxed. That was a conscious convincer, okay? So once you've done something that they can say, yeah, oh yeah, that worked, then they're open to the theory, okay? So it's really important that you set them up through your in state with this conscious convincer. That makes sense? Okay. The next one I've got down here is what I call the 1, 2, whole. Now this is for impulsive and reflective learners. Impulsive people are like people like me who'll come back from a conversation and think, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. I'm not quick on my feet. Impulsive learners think with their mouths, not necessarily connect to their brains, by the way, okay? But us poor reflectors are left behind. So it's really important when you're questioning the group or you're asking the thing, you just give them 2 seconds, write your own ideas down first, then share with the person next to you, okay? Just give the reflectives like me a little bit of a chance to think, okay? Kinesthetic learners lead that as well. It's got to feel right before we'll contribute. So we need a little bit of time to think our processes through. So in your questioning technique, always build in a little bit of time, maybe 3 seconds, 5 seconds, that's all we need. Just don't put us under pressure. You put us under pressure, we go straight up to the defensive mode and cannot access the neocortex part of the brain. The last thing I'm going to use here is, and I'll finish with this one. Throughout this morning, I have used the term, have you got any questions? Versus clarification. Okay, this comes from, this is probably not good for the people out in the regions to be able to read that writing. Questions versus clarification. What happens is that why do most adults not like asking questions, folks? They don't want to look dumb. And you as the educator can stand up front and say, no question is a silly question. The only silly question is the one that's not asked. Who's done that? Okay. Okay. We also know that every rule has an exception. I don't want to be the exception. Thank you very much. I ain't going to ask a question. I was at an English as a second language college, and one of the lecturers said there that their overseas students did not mind asking questions. Did not like asking questions, but they didn't mind asking for things to be clarified. I thought, how clever is that? Okay, because if I've got to ask a question, I'm a bit dumb, I don't know, but if I wanted something to be clarified, well, I know 98%. There's just a little bit I need clarifying. So can I just, again, suggest that you look at your words to get people that really good. And I just say now, has anyone got any questions or anything they'd like clarified? And with 30 seconds to go, has anyone got any questions or things they'd like clarified? Oh, bugger, yes.
No, just one that comes up always when I talk about use of colour. So people always say, well, what about people are colourblind?
Okay, now that is a really good question because I know the answer. Okay. I've had that probably now close to 6,000, 7,000 evaluations back where I've talked about colour with left and right brain, etc. I have only ever had 3 people who've actually come up and talked to me about that, how they experienced it. They're colourblind, how they experienced it. And they were saying the biggest one they had was the red and the green, but they could seem to identify with. So my experience from people feedback is that it's not as big a problem as we think it is, okay, for people who have got that colour blindness, that they actually can differentiate, okay. I am aware now on this one, I probably should not have used pink because it's probably not real good for the visual people out in the regions to read from. But I think I would still really advocate the use of colour. Can you imagine everything I've done now just being in one colour, blue or black? Okay, can you see the difference? The use of colour, yeah. So yeah, I would, encourage it.
I love it.
It comes up, but I don't think it's as accurate what people think. I think it's an excuse sometimes just to use black or blue, which was a teacher's colour, okay? Oh, sorry, red's a teacher's colour. Black and blue you can use. Anything else anyone would like clarified? Because we're coming to the end of the session. Guys, can I thank you very much for those people in the room here who've been with me, some of you for 3 sessions, those people out in the regions. Thank you very much. And if you've got anything you'd like clarified, the email's there and I'll do my best to kind of get back to you as I can. Thank you very much.
Authorised by the Government of Western Australia, Perth.